Carmelo Anthony has one of the most complicated legacies in NBA history. He has a lot of pros and a lot of cons on his career resume, and throughout this video, we'll touch on all of them. The pros include that he was a top 10 scorer of all time in terms of all time points, and he still sits at number 10 all time. He was very clutch and hit big shots for both Denver and New York. He could get to his spots and had one of the prettiest jumpers ever, even when he was late in his career, and he could create space in a phone booth. When you talk about ethical scorers nowadays and the debate about whether Shea is a ethical scorer, Carmelo Anthony is the epitome of an ethical scorer, and in today's day and age he would have thrived, and there's a lot of old heads that loved watching him play because of how ethical he was. He was also very fun to watch and led the Knicks to the playoffs in years where they didn't have great rosters. He's one of the greatest Knicks ever, and despite not winning a championship throughout his career, he also never really had a team around him that was capable of winning that championship, especially in his later years in New York. In Denver, it can be argued that he had a championship roster around him, but when he was back in New York for the latter part of his career, he didn't have a team around him to compete for a championship, so you cannot really fault Carmelo Anthony for that lack of a championship. And when you watch him play, he hits some insanely clutch shots, both in the regular season and postseason, and he's known as one of the most clutch players of all time. And when you look at the pros of his career, he is the epitome of a top 10 scorer of all time. That's what he did. He was a pure scorer and a big shot maker. And because of that, he'll always be remembered as one of the most fun and best players, especially in New York Knicks history. But during the 2010s, he was unequivocally one of the best scorers and one of the best players to step on the hardwood. And he and Kevin Durant had some incredible duels, as they were both very similar in that they could rise up over anybody and were two amazing scorers. So there was a lot of OKC versus New York games where those two would just go back and forth and back and forth. And if New York wasn't in the Eastern Conference at the same time as LeBron James and the Miami Heat and later on the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think New York could have definitely made some noise in the Eastern Conference. Now on to the cons. Melo never did win a championship, and that does hurt his legacy, and he only made the conference finals one time in his career. In the playoffs, he did have a reputation of crumbling at times, and he was a first-round exit 11 times while only making it past the first round 3 times, and he wasn't necessarily an efficient scorer in the regular season or the postseason. And for Melo, this does hurt his legacy, especially the lack of a championship, because when you're looking at players and looking at their legacy, you do want to see how they performed in the playoffs and did they win a championship? Could they rise above the pressure, especially playing in New York? Could you bring New York a championship? Because when you're playing in a market like New York, they don't care about regular season stats or being a top 10 scorer of all time or big shots in the regular season. They care about winning a championship because that's what New York knows. New York is a title town and they have a ton of championships. And when you cannot lead their team to a championship, whether it is your fault or not, it will diminish your legacy. And for Melo, he definitely has had his New York legacy specifically diminished because of this. And this creates a complicated legacy for Melo all time because obviously I don't think anyone really holds him in the top 20 to 25 players of all time, but there's a lot of speculation about where he fits in to the top 100 players of all time based on his career legacy, because he's a top 10 scorer of all time and he has the 10th most points in NBA history, and scoring does matter, and he has certain accolades like this to go along with his resume, and he's been an amazing player for a long time and a fan favorite in a lot of different places. New York loved him. He was a folk hero in New York, and even in Denver he was very fun to watch. That Denver team that had J.R. Smith and him and others was very fun to watch. So Carmelo Anthony does have a very complicated legacy, and it's hard to really place him on an all-time tier. And the legacy and ranking that he will have all time is very subjective to the person. You can't necessarily put him top 25 or even maybe top 50 because of the lack of a championship and deep playoff success and team success. But you also have to consider the fact that he did not have good teams around him, especially in New York. And when you look at what he did for the New York Knicks and for the Denver Nuggets and what he did for the sport of basketball, he was one of the best scorers of all time. And he is a very fun player to watch with a cult-like following throughout his entire career. Let me know in the comment section below where you rank him all time, and let me know if you think that his lack of a championship really was his fault, or if it was just on the management of New York not being able to bring in big name players to play alongside him and really step up alongside him. And for Melo, I personally would rank him top 50 all time, maybe even top 40. And I think that he's a top 5 scorer of all time in terms of he could score at 3 levels. He could score at the mid-range at an elite level. And he was very fun to watch. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe to the channel. God bless you all. Have an amazing day. And make sure to subscribe. God bless.